Swedish defense firm Saab wants Canada to buy and build its fighter jets. The firm is pitching a partnership with Bombardier and promising to create up to 10,000 jobs along with it.
The company that makes the Gripen has told CTV News that 10,000 manufacturing and research jobs could land in Canada if Ottawa adds the Swedish fighter jet to its military fleet.
In Canada, to do their own upgrades, to build parts of it, to do final assembly and tests. We, as Saab, we are prepared to do that technology transfer to Canada and support them.
In November 2025, a royal motorcade moved through Ottawa. At first glance, it looked like a familiar scene ceremony, tradition, and polite speeches. But this visit carried far more weight than a routine diplomatic exchange. King Carl XVI Gustaf and Queen Sylvia of Sweden had not traveled to Canada since 2006, and this time they arrived with a purpose that extended well beyond symbolism. Accompanying them was a large and strategically important delegation. It included Sweden's defense minister, it included Sweden's defense minister, Sweden's defense minister, industry minister, and senior executives from some of the country's leading aerospace and defense companies. Behind the smiles, formal handshakes, and ceremonial appearances, serious discussions were taking place. Discussions centered on fighter jets, national security, and the future direction of Canada's Air Force. To understand why this visit drew attention not only in Ottawa but also in Washington, it is necessary to revisit decisions made a few years earlier. In 2022, the Canadian government selected the F-35 fighter jet, manufactured by Lockheed Martin, to replace the aging fleet of the Royal Canadian Air Force. This decision followed years of evaluation, political debate, and shifting priorities. Canada agreed to purchase 88 F-35 aircraft in a deal initially estimated at 19 billion Canadian dollars. Government officials at the time acknowledged the high cost but defended it as necessary. The reasoning was clear. Canada needed to maintain close operational alignment with the United States and other NATO allies. The F-35, widely adopted by Western militaries, offered advanced stealth capabilities and deep integration within allied defense networks. However, the financial story did not end there. By June 2025, Canada's Auditor General reported that the acquisition cost had risen significantly from the original 19 billion to approximately 27 billion Canadian dollars. When additional expenses were included, such as infrastructure upgrades, long-term maintenance, weapons systems, and operational support, the projected total climbed even higher, approaching 33 billion. What began as a costly but manageable program had grown into a much larger financial commitment. This escalation raised concerns among policymakers, analysts, and the public. Questions about affordability, long-term sustainability, and value for money began to dominate the conversation. At the same time, delays in the F-35 program added another layer of uncertainty. Reports from the United States indicated that the advanced Block 4 upgrade package, part of the configuration Canada had ordered, was both billions of dollars over budget and several years behind schedule. Although Canada still expects to receive its first F-35 aircraft in 2028, full operational capability may not be achieved until the early 2030s. Beyond cost and timing, a deeper issue began to surface: dependence. The F-35 is not just a fighter jet, it is part of a highly interconnected digital ecosystem managed largely by Lockheed Martin. The aircraft relies on user-based systems for software updates, maintenance tracking, mission planning, and data sharing. Supporters of the program argue that this integration is a strength. It ensures seamless cooperation with allies and enhances operational effectiveness in joint missions. Critics, however, see a potential vulnerability. They argue that reliance on foreign-controlled digital infrastructure could limit Canada's sovereignty over its own frontline defense systems. This debate intensified in March 2025, when Mark Carney became Canada's Prime Minister. Shortly after taking office, Carney ordered a review of the F-35 contract. His decision was influenced in part by rising trade tensions with the United States during Donald Trump's presidency, which had strained relations between the two long-standing allies. At that stage, Canada had firmly committed to purchasing the first 16 aircraft, while the remaining 72 were still part of the broader agreement. Although the review did not cancel the contract, It reopened a discussion that many had assumed was already settled. Sweden quickly recognized an opportunity. Saab, the manufacturer of the JAS-39 Gripen fighter jet, returned with a renewed inflow. The renewed manufacturer of the Renly Nyanbina 39 Gripen fighter jet returned with a renewed and Gripen fighter jet returned with a renewed and ambitious proposal. This offer went far beyond simply selling aircraft. Saab proposed assembling the Gripen jets in Canada in partnership with Bombardier, one of the country's leading aerospace companies. According to Swedish officials, this plan could support up to 10,000 skilled Canadian jobs. It also included significant technology transfer, allowing Canada not only to operate the aircraft but also to maintain, upgrade, and manufacture key components domestically. This level of industrial participation stood in contrast to the F-35 program, where much of the work and technological control remains concentrated in the United States. Importantly, much of the work and technological control remains concentrated in the United States. Importantly, this proposal was not purely theoretical. Saab and Bombardier had previously collaborated on the GlobalEye airborne early warning system, demonstrating that transatlantic industrial partnerships could succeed. This existing relationship strengthened Sweden's case and made the offer more credible. From a technical perspective, the F-35 and the Gripen E represent different design philosophies. The F-35 is a fifth-generation stealth fighter built around advanced sensors, low observability, and deep integration with allied networks. It is designed to operate in highly contested environments and to share vast amounts of data across a coalition force. The Gripen E, on the other hand, is often described as a 4.5-generation aircraft. It emphasizes flexibility, lower operating costs, and adaptability. One of its key features is the ability to operate from shorter runways, including reinforced highways. This capability reflects Sweden's Cold War strategy of dispersing aircraft to avoid concentrated attacks on major airbases. For Canada, this feature holds particular appeal, with its vast geography, remote northern regions, and limited infrastructure. In certain areas, the ability to deploy aircraft from unconventional locations could provide strategic advantages. Another development shifted the conversation further. In October 2025, Sweden and Ukraine signed a letter of intent that could lead to a large Ukrainian purchase of Gripen fighters. If finalized, this deal would significantly increase production demand. A Canadian assembly line could potentially serve both domestic needs and international orders, linking Canada's aerospace industry more closely to European defense efforts. The United States responded quickly to Sweden's renewed outreach. The issue became intertwined with NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command, a joint-use Canada defense organization that has been in place since 1957. NORAD plays a critical role in monitoring and defending North American airspace. U.S. Ambassador to Canada at the time, Pete Hoekstra, warned that reducing Canada's F-35 purchase could have implications for NORAD cooperation. His remarks sparked criticism within Canada, where some officials viewed them as political pressure rather than a formal policy position from the Pentagon. Public opinion added yet another dimension to the debate. Surveys conducted in late 2025 suggested that many Canadians were open to the idea of adopting the Gripen, either as a full replacement or alongside the F-35, while public opinion does not directly determine military procurement decisions. It does influence the political environment in which those decisions are made. Canada now faces a complex and consequential choice. On one side, the F-35 offers cutting-edge stealth technology and strong alignment with NATO allies. On the other, the Gripen promises economic benefits, domestic production, and greater strategic independence. The decision is not simply about which aircraft performs better in the air. It is about balancing multiple factors: cost, timing, sovereignty, alliance commitments, and industrial development. Each option carries its own advantages and risks. Continuing with the F-35 would reinforce Canada's close defense relationship with the United States. The aircraft's integration with American systems would ensure seamless coordination within NORAD and other joint operations. This path would signal a clear commitment to maintaining the existing defense partnership. However, this approach also comes with trade-offs. Costs have already risen significantly and future expenses remain uncertain. Canada would continue to rely heavily on use-managed systems for critical aspects of its Air Force operations. A substantial portion of defense spending would flow to American companies. In contrast, choosing the Gripen would represent a shift toward greater domestic control. Saab's proposal to build the aircraft in Canada could create thousands of jobs and strengthen the country's aerospace industry. It would also allow Canada to develop greater expertise in maintaining and upgrading its own fleet. Yet this option is not without challenges. Adopting a different aircraft from many NATO allies could complicate joint missions and require additional coordination. It could also introduce friction in Canada's relationship with the United States. Ultimately, the debate reflects a broader strategic question. How should Canada balance independence with alliance unity in a world where the United States remains the dominant military power? Prime Minister Mark Carney has emphasized that the review of the fighter jet contract is focused on ensuring value for money and protecting Canada's long-term interests. He has also made it clear that the review is not intended as a rejection of the United States. As 2026 begins, the first 16 F-35 deliveries are still on track. Behind closed doors, however, officials continue to weigh timelines, industrial benefits, and diplomatic consequences. The Swedish royal visit may have lasted only a few days, but it brought years of quiet debate into the public spotlight. At the same time, Canada's economic landscape is evolving. Trade relations with China, which had been strained, began to show signs of improvement. Following a visit by Prime Minister Carney to Beijing in January 2026, China announced that it would suspend several tariffs on Canadian agricultural products. Specifically, China's finance ministry confirmed the removal of 100% tariffs on Canadian canola meal and peas. It also paused 25% duties on lobster and crab imports, with these measures set to remain in place until the end of 2026 for Canadian farmers and seafood exporters. This development provided much needed relief. However, not all issues were resolved. Tariffs on Canadian canola seed, one of the country's most important exports, were not included in the announcement. China's Commerce Ministry indicated that its review of canola imports was ongoing, leaving producers waiting for further clarity. Despite this uncertainty, some market analysts reported that Chinese buyers had already begun booking Canadian canola shipments. This suggested expectations of improved trade conditions in the near future. Other products, including canola oil and pork, were also absent from the latest tariff adjustments. Additional policy changes could still occur as negotiations continue. These developments are part of a broader shift in global trade dynamics. Under President Donald Trump, U.S. trade policies have, at times, strained relationships with traditional allies. In response, some Western countries have explored stronger economic ties with China, which has positioned itself as a stable and reliable partner. During his visit to Beijing, Prime Minister Carney signaled Canada's interest in a more balanced trade strategy. He announced that up to 49,000 Chinese electric vehicles could enter Canada under a relatively low most favored nation tariff rate. This move highlighted Canada's willingness to keep trade channels open with the world's second-largest economy. Taken together, the fighter jet debate and the evolving trade relationship with China illustrate a country at a crossroads. Canada is attempting to balance its long-standing alliance with the United States against a desire for greater economic and strategic flexibility. Each decision carries significant consequences. The choices made today will shape not only Canada's military capabilities, but also its economic future and its role on the global stage. In a world where security, technology, and trade are increasingly interconnected, Canada's path forward will require careful judgment. Whether in the skies above North America or in the global marketplace, the stakes are high and the outcomes will resonate for decades to come.